It's time for the Unexed News. Extraterrestrials, time anomalies, dimensions, remote viewing, UFOs, UAPs, and USOs, ghostly encounters, abductions, Bigfoot, and more. Your end of the week news source for everything unexplained. Here is your host for the Unexed News podcast, Margie K.
Hello and welcome to Unexed News. I'm your host, Margie K, and we're here every Friday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. Want to mention just a couple of things before I bring my guests on. Well, the one big thing, of course. This is XCon coming up October 30th through November the 1st in Springfield, Missouri. And we've got a heck of a lineup for you. Our keynote is Scott Wolter from America Unearthed, and his subject is the Knights Templar and the alien connection. So that is going to be extremely interesting. And we've got a special going on until the 30th of this month. You can get 50% off tickets to XCon by using the promo code UNXSUB, UNXSUB. You want to remember that. Just go to unxnetwork.com to reserve your tickets. And this evening I have two guests. The first is Tyler Kiwala, and the second is Maureen, Richmond, and they are both speakers at XCon. Tyler, he's an experiencer. He's also an independent researcher and passionate disclosure activist, most popularly known in the awakening community for the Journey to Truth podcast, hosted by himself and fellow disclosure activist Aaron Kuhn. Together, they have created a platform discussing any and all controversial and eye-opening topics without limitations in an effort to spread awareness to the masses. Tyler is the co-producer of the Journey to Truth conference and the new documentary film Cahokia Mounds, The Untold Story. Welcome to the program, Tyler.
I'm glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Well, I'm so glad you could join me this evening.
Yeah, and I'm glad to be here. And don't forget to mention that you're in that documentary as well.
Yes, and thank you for including me in that. Let's go ahead and start off with the documentary. What inspired you to create that?
Well, it was pre-COVID whenever I started, I don't know, I was led to go visit that site, and I just kept visiting it, and I just started looking into it, and I realized there's so much more than we've been told. You know, there's all these conspiracy theories surrounding on what could potentially have happened there, and, you know, alleged giant skeletons that were discovered, and just a number of things. And I started trying to look it up and research, and I realized there's really nothing online I could find that covers it. All the documentaries were like the boring documentaries that you watch in history class or something, you know, nothing that would really cover that side of it. So we decided to go ahead and do that. And, you know, the pandemic came and we threw it in the back seat, forgot about it for years. And something just kind of nudged us like, okay, now's the time. And we just finished it this year. And I understand why we had to wait, because for one, you wouldn't have been in it. A number of the interviews that we got were from people that we had met over the years, and new information made its way into our awareness that if we had put it out 4 years ago, it would not have been the same film that it is now. And I think it turned out great, but there's a story there that is an unknown story. And especially just in St. Louis, Mound City and all that stuff, people, my friends locally that I show it to, they had no idea about this stuff, and they live here. And that's how I was. I'm like, how do we not know about this history? So that's why I felt like, well, if anyone's going to do it, it's going to be me. So.
Yeah, well, I certainly didn't know the history until I watched the documentary. I did not know the backstory. Before you interviewed me and had me do remote viewing, I did not know that there was any suspicion that there were giants involved at all, but that's what I saw inside the mound. And,
Right.
and then in past history, going way, way back. It's it is a very interesting story. Could you, for people who don't know about it, can you tell us where it is and a little bit of the background?
Yeah, so it's just on the just east of St. Louis, Cahokia, Illinois, and it's a Native American. They're Native American mounds. Allegedly, they're Native American mounds. No one actually knows who built them or where the people went that lived there. The people just disappeared one day, so there's just mystery surrounding the site, and there's all sorts of theories. But there was like 80 mounds total, but a lot more than that because it extended into across the Mississippi into St. Louis. It was massive at one time. And these people, um, less than 1% of the whole site had been excavated. But in the early 1900s, there's an old St. Louis Post-Dispatch article that talks about two giant skeletons being uncovered with double rows of teeth and potentially 6 fingers and 6 toes, not human. So we're talking about large, not like extremely tall, but between 8 and 9 feet. And if
Hmm.
we go based on the theory of evolution that we've been handed, we were supposed to have started off very short and gotten a lot taller. So if you have tall beings back then, that really doesn't fit in with the timeline. So 8 to 9 feet tall are still giants. And then when you have double rows of teeth, you're talking about something completely different. And there is an anomaly underneath the big mound that researchers have been, looking at for years. They tried to drill down through it, and we provided that evidence and data in the documentary. But they drilled down, and they couldn't penetrate it. It was something so hard they couldn't penetrate. They said they were drilling for like water drainage or sewerage or whatever it was, their explanation. But I'm pretty sure somebody was trying to figure out what the hell's down there, right?
Uh-huh.
um, Remote viewers have looked at it, channelers. I mean, almost everyone, the people that don't know each other, independent researchers, when they look at it, a giant, something 15 to 30 feet long, an anomaly, maybe a sarcophagus, but there's something there. It's been proven with GPR scanning, ground penetrating radar, and there's something there, and potentially a giant skeleton. We don't know. But it's a UFO hotspot. There's crazy energy anomalies. They have signs up on the site: beware of lightning strikes on mounds. When I was there recently, a tree was just exploded because it had been recently hit by lightning. So there's something energetically going on there where lightning is, striking this ground.
Uh-huh.
There's been artifacts found that don't even fit in with Native American history. They show men in like helmets and shields and armor and stuff like that. So we're talking about maybe a potentially a whole other race of people, a whole other civilization that might have inhabited this area too. It's extremely fascinating, and it's only 25 minutes from my house, right near St. Louis, Missouri, in Illinois, though, in Cahokia, Illinois.
And one of the things that you included in the documentary was cleaning up the area that is kind of a monument or memorial to the mound sites. And it was in very, very poor condition. And you cleaned that up. So, wow, thank you for doing that. Evidently, the city or whoever was in charge of that wasn't doing their job.
Yeah, it was really heartbreaking actually, because for one, the stone where it originally was placed, they relocated it to build a bridge, and I mean, it's amazing they even have a memorial, and they have a street called Mound Street, and it's dedicated to the mounds that were there that were destroyed during the construction of St. Louis downtown. And it's like, it's not I mean, no one knows about it, and we're not taught about it in school. You ask locals, I mean, people just are unaware that it's there unless by word of mouth you hear about it somehow. And that's how I found it. And when we went there to film, it was a disaster. And
Oh,
we came back and we cleaned it up, and we just, I guess we kind of just cleansed the land. We did my dad brought some crystals and some sage and Palo Santo, and we were just like clearing the energy there, and we just kind of did what we felt like we needed to do, and
uh-huh.
we put that in the documentary.
Yeah, that was nice that you did that. How long did it take you to make the film?
Well, we started it in 2019 and we finished it in 2023. So
Wow.
had we worked on it from start to finish, I would say it probably would have been a 1 to 2 year project.
Mhm.
Because it's boots on the ground effort. We're not just Zoom calling people and interviewing them. We were traveling to the locations and meeting people and going on site, and it was a very boots on the ground effort, and that takes a lot of money. We had to fly somebody in to get professional drone footage of the site, which I think made the documentary. It's some of the best
Oh
drone
yeah.
footage that I've even seen of the site. And because we tried to buy some, and it was insanely expensive, because there is no free drone footage of the Cahokia Mounds on the internet. There's just simply not. I tried.
Oh, okay.
So
Yeah.
we had to get our own, and thank God we did, because we got
Well,
some incredible footage.
yeah, you sure did. I was very impressed by that footage as well. Um, well, I'll tell you what. Let's talk a little bit about your the Journey to Truth conference that you've had the last 2 years. Is that correct?
Yep.
And are you planning one for next year?
We are planning one for next year. Originally, it was supposed to be a one-time hit, and we had, some overwhelming positive feedback after the first one. And it was
Mhm.
kind of last minute, and I pulled the trigger on the second one without thinking about it. And I was lucky to snag the venue again. And this time around, before I even left the venue, they reached out to me. They stopped me at the resort, and they said, "Hey,
Mhm.
um, you're our favorite event that we host here every year. We love it, and the place is yours again next year. If you want it, here's our opening dates." So they want us back already. So, yeah, we actually really haven't fully dove into the planning stages. It's kind of pre-planning, but yeah, it's going to happen again. But no, we don't really have any details yet.
Tell us a little bit about the location of that conference.
So Pure Marquette Lodge and Conference Center in Grafton, Illinois. In Grafton, Illinois, for anyone who hasn't been there, it's like a diamond in the rough. Like, when you think of Illinois, you don't think of this beautiful resort that people fly. When they fly into the conference and drive down that river road and get there, it's like, wow, this just doesn't even seem like it belongs, right? It's just this kind of magical land, and there's all sort of elemental energy and Sasquatch energy, and they even have like Bigfoot signage up. I mean, it's a hot spot. You've
Mhm.
experienced
Oh,
stuff
it
out there.
is. Yeah,
Yeah.
I had my own experience there, which was amazing.
Yeah.
Um,
That
yeah,
that was incredible. What happened? They show up in the middle of the night for you or something?
yeah, 4:30 a.m. I heard this whoop 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 outside, and it woke me up, and I sat up, and I'm thinking, "No, I didn't just hear that." And then I heard a crack of a big log hitting a tree, and then I knew a human couldn't have made that big of a sound. And then I heard bang, bang, bang on the cabin right behind my head. And
Yeah.
so I
Wow.
knew they were there for me. I just knew it. It was just totally awesome that and all the way up, I was driving up with Debbie Ziegelmeyer. She was also a speaker at that event, and she was telling me, "Oh, this area is known for Sasquatch. People even see them swimming in the Mississippi River because that drive is right up next to the river. It's so cool." And and the one of the Bigfoot shows had their event at that very same resort where you have your conference.
That's
And
right. I forgot about that.
yeah, they had a lot of people there. Debbie was there for that, and several other people I know, and they said that's just one of the biggest hotspots, and you can tell why, because you got the river. There are very thick woods everywhere. This
Yep.
is just really remote, with just little small towns along the way, and
Yep.
then this resort, or I don't know if you call it a resort, but it's
Right. They
it's
just
rustic.
Yeah, they call it a lodge and conference center. It's a
Okay, yeah.
lodge. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's a very nice, conference center,
Yeah.
indeed.
And it's so remote that your cell phone doesn't work there. I mean, that most people's phone doesn't work there.
Yeah.
Um, but what's interesting is, if you remember the last night you were there sitting around the fire with Debbie, and there was a group of people that asked you, if you were to go looking for Sasquatch, which way would you go, or something, and you pointed this way into the woods. Well,
Oh,
that
yeah.
group of people went, and they went up and filmed and got audio, and they caught audio, and they caught all kinds of weird sounds, and it was a whole crazy experience, and they even
Wow.
did an episode on it after the conference. But I don't even think you realize it was all because you pointed in the right direction.
I did not know that.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
did
so
not know. I've got to hear that.
yeah, it's pretty
Yeah,
good.
that's thank you
Um,
for letting me know. Yeah, no, I felt their presence in that place. So,
and I
yeah.
forgot something in my room, so I had to go back there the next like 2 days later, and I
Mm.
just decided to go hiking through some of the trails, and I saw you always see the tree breaks, but this was weird. This was one, there was three trees in a row. Each one was taller than the next. It was like a ladder, and each one was broken in the same direction, but
Oh,
they were clean breaks. Like the trees were green, they weren't dead trees. And it was just so obvious to me. I've never seen something that I'm like, yes, that was a Sasquatch tree break. I just felt it. And there was
yeah.
three of them in a row, and each one was at a different height, like it was stepping down. There was just no way that was natural, and I just thought that was interesting. There's stuff going on out there, and if you spend enough time, I think you're going to experience something.
Oh, most definitely. Yeah. Well, that's a good location. It had good energy, and the conference was fantastic. Just really, really good speakers, and also the attendees. Everybody seemed to have just a higher level of consciousness than the general public. Let's just say that.
That's a good way of
Let's just,
putting it. And
yeah.
your presentation was phenomenal, by the way. People were blown away. I mean, it was awesome. The whole thing was great, and thank you for being there.
Well, thank you for having me. Let's talk a little bit about your presentation coming up at XCon. The title is ET, Sasquatch, and Inner Earth Experiences. Can you give us a little teaser about what you're going to talk about?
Well, that is the teaser, what you just said. But um, these are all things I never thought I would experience, but over the years and going out and spending time in the woods, and especially up in Washington State, I started having Sasquatch experiences. And I've never seen one, but everything, it's hard to explain, but you just know sometimes, when they're around and things happen, and I've heard them, loud vocalizations, the tree knocks, all that. But there's some really interesting, good stories that I don't tell often because I don't have the chance to. But I'm going to share some of those in my presentation. Just my experiences with Sasquatch, even physically being touched by them, but I don't see them. Like they're interdimensional. So uh, I've had them put their hand on my back, tap me in the shoulder, up in this ranch in Washington, Missouri, and it's phenomenal. I've heard them, like I said,
Wow.
but um, I'm gonna cover some of that and some stuff that I experienced at Board Camp Crystal Mine as well with
Oh,
them,
yeah.
which I know you've been there.
Hmm.
So the energy of board camp is very similar to the energy of the ranch that I was staying at in Washington. It's like this hot spot for paranormal, UFO, Sasquatch activity. So, um,
Washington, Missouri,
no, Washington State, like
Washington State.
yeah,
Okay. Oh,
yeah,
well,
all the
that's
way up.
definitely a paranormal hotspot.
Yeah,
Um,
that's Sasquatch,
oh,
territory.
yeah.
Everywhere you go, there's stores and merchandise, and there's everyone's seen them.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and then I'm going to talk about a couple alien ET abduction stories, things that have happened to me that might sound crazy, but I quit prefacing the stories with "this sounds crazy" because it's just the reality of what's happened. And I know these things are real, and I have some really incredible stories to share as far as that goes. And then Inner Earth as well. Um, I've encountered an actual Inner Earth being who phased into this reality, I guess you could say,
Hmm.
and gave me a telepathic download. And I'm going to share that whole story. And I went to Belize earlier this year in February, and I made contact again. And I was shown on two separate days, I was shown the underworld, the Mayan underworld, and very clear images of what it looked like, and even connecting with the beings in that area. So I'm going to be sharing those stories and some other stuff too.
Wow.
So
Well, that
yeah,
all sounds extremely interesting. I know that the crowd coming to the XCon are going to enjoy that. Definitely. I can't wait to hear it myself.
right.
Um, well, you said you've been an experiencer. When did that start? Were you very young?
Well, as I got older, I look back at my childhood and realized that some of the things that I thought were like recurring dreams or weird things, I think I've been experiencing stuff as a child, throughout my whole life. But at the time, I didn't understand it. It wasn't until I was 24 years old, when my mother passed away, and I know she's still with me, so it's okay. But it wasn't until she passed away that it was like somebody flipped a switch, and I started having experiences. They started off negative, and I'm going to share one of these experiences. I shared one with you on this when you had me on your show a while back about being levitated out of my bed.
Oh, yeah.
Um, I'm going to share that at the conference as well. But that was what kicked it off for me, because it was life changing and traumatic, quite honestly. But it didn't. Nothing like that started until she passed away. And it's weird. I have theories on why that is, but it was like I was blown wide open, and shit got real after that. And
Yeah.
it happened for years and years, and it wasn't really good. There was negative like entity attacks and stuff until I learned that I could do something about it, and it taught me a lot about protection and the whole astral realm and what's going on there, and the reality of like sleep paralysis and what's going on, and these people seeing shadow people, which I've had plenty of experiences with. And it just sent me down the rabbit hole, right? It sent me down this path
Mhm.
where I had no choice but to believe in this stuff that I used to never believe in. But it was showing up and it was happening to me. So, you don't even have the luxury to be a skeptic anymore. You're looking for other people who experience this stuff, and it just takes you down this path, and there's no turning back. And you know that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Once you go in the rabbit hole, you can't get out
Right.
because it keeps going deeper and deeper. That seems to be the case with almost everybody who has paranormal experiences on a regular basis. There's something new always around the corner for you to learn about and deal with. So,
Right. Just when you think you've seen it all, you're
yeah,
wrong.
yeah, you're wrong. You're wrong.
Yeah.
Exactly. And, there are some people who are very open to this sort of thing, and some people are closed off about it and they never have an experience. Why do you think that is?
I think it's all frequency. Sometimes everything that happens in your life is a frequency match. It's frequency specific to you, whatever your vibration is. So if you're existing in a higher consciousness and a higher vibration, well, guess what? So are these other realms, and so are these other beings and ETs and craft, and they're only visible in the higher frequencies. If you're in the low dense frequencies, where the skeptics where they reside,
Yeah.
um, they're not going to see it. It's literally not visible in that reality. It's like a radio station. You have to be tuned into the right station. And some people are already naturally there. Some people can achieve it, but through meditation and other, diet and other practices and modalities. But it's specific to the individual. It's going to look different for everyone. But I think that it really does depend on your frequency and your intentions as well. If you're going out in the woods to hunt Bigfoot with, you got guns and you're going to kill one if you see it, they know your intentions. These are telepathic, intelligent beings, multidimensional beings. They know you. They know you're coming from miles away. They're not going to show themselves. These guys are never going to find one and shoot one, because they're not going to get the luxury of seeing a Sasquatch, because
Yeah.
they're ill intentioned. If your intentions are pure, you leave the phone at home. Don't even go out and try to document it. You go out in the woods purely for the experience. You're going to have a much better chance of communicating and potentially seeing one. And it's all based on your intention, and they know your intention. It's up to them to show themselves Sasquatch, UFOs, whatever the case. It's up to them whether or not you get to see them. It's not up to you. And
I
but it
think
is up to you, because you have to be pure-hearted, and that's at the end of the day, I think that's key to experiencing some of these things.
I think you're right on with that. Absolutely. That explains a lot.
Hmm.
And it makes it easier for people to understand as well. So, how can people see your documentary film?
There's a website, cahokiauntold.com. It's that simple. You can Google it, whatever. I can send you the link if you like, but cahokiauntold.com,
Okay.
and all the information for the website is there. And I mean, for the documentary is there, including the link to watch the documentary for free. It doesn't cost anything. There is a donate option if you feel compelled to donate for the next project, because we are going to make more films.
Wow.
And we also have a link to our Patreon account, which is only $5 a month. But on the Patreon account, we have bonus footage, bonus features for the documentary. So including raw interviews, unused footage, and some really cool things that happen. Like we were flying a drone over one of the mounds, Emerald Mound in Illinois, not even a Cahokia site. And the drone, something took over control of the drone, and it said high wind warning, but there was no high wind. And so what we realized is this Emerald Mound is actually producing some sort of energetic field that won't allow the drone to fly over it.
Oh, wow.
And I interviewed the drone pilot, which didn't make it into the documentary, and he just talks about how in all of his years flying the drone, nothing like that has ever happened. It kept saying high wind hazard, but there was no wind. So it literally, you can even see it on camera on the drone. He's trying to fly over the mound, and it's like something, he explained it as like a car would drift. He's like, something just took over, and the drone would just drift around. He could not fly over the top of this mound. It was incredible. And we had a black helicopter fly over just after that. All three of us couldn't hear the helicopter. We could not. We literally couldn't hear it. And maybe it's arguably because of the distance, but you can always hear a helicopter coming from a mile away, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And if you directly, and we're out in the middle of nowhere. If you know, oh my God, Lebanon, Illinois. I mean, it's just farm fields, and this Emerald Mound is in the middle of nowhere. So for a helicopter to even be flying over,
wow.
I don't know, but that's the kind of bonus features and stuff that you can find on our Patreon and some other good content as well. But
okay. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for being on the show tonight. I know it was a short evening, but I'd like to have you come back sometime and talk some more.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much.
I'm looking forward to your talk at XCon.
Yeah, I'm excited about it. Thanks for inviting me.
Okay, we'll be back right after these messages.
In the heart of Nebraska, a paranormal disturbance has been uncovered. As this mystery unfolds, strange objects are discovered.
What do you get from it?
I feel a real demonic energy off of it, but I also feel more than demonic, it's just plain evil.
And there was a creepy door down there that was painted on with spots and different types of patterns. It just didn't seem right.
And contact is made.
It just touched me on the back of the neck.
Will the spirits of Blue Hill be set free? Or will they be trapped for eternity? It's almost here, ladies and gentlemen. The UNX Network Year 2 anniversary at XCon 2023. XCon is being held this year from October the 30th to November 1st at the beautiful Oasis Hotel and Conference Center in Springfield, Missouri. Top speakers include host of America Unearthed, Scott Walter, plus Haley Ramsey, Sev Talk, UNX's very own Maureen Richmond and Dan Terry, Mindy Toutfest, Harriet McFeely, Forrest Crawford, and many more. And they're all coming to deliver new information on topics like UFOs, alien encounters, cryptids and ancient secrets, and real hauntings from the afterlife. Join us for the film premiere of A Haunting in Blue Hill. And don't miss the Mad Hatter Paranormal Halloween Bash, Banquet, and Costume Contest on All Hallows Eve, October 31st. So join us as we close out the 2023 conference season. Info and tickets are available now at unxnetwork.com. That's unxnetwork.com, and we'll see you there.
Welcome back. I'm your host, Margie Kay, and this is UNX News on the KUNX Network, the UNX Network. And this evening we're talking with, we just got done speaking with Tyler Kiwala. He's a speaker at XCon. And now we're going to bring on Maureen Richmond. She's a MUFON field investigator, as well as a professional astrologer and lifelong student of parapsychology. She's combined her interest in UFOs, the paranormal, and astrological influence to produce a new look at the hidden factors at play during UFO encounters and other paranormal experiences. Maureen's PhD is from Arkansas State University in Heritage Studies, a multidisciplinary field covering history, historic preservation, museum studies, and folklore. She's the author of 2 astrologically themed novels, Cathedral of Capricorn and The Scholars of Sagittarius, as well as a nonfiction study of paganism and numerous astrological essays on the psychospiritual influence of fixed stars like Sirius. And of course, Maureen has a show on the UNX Network called Star Speak. Welcome to the program, Maureen.
Hey there, Margie. It's great to see you this evening.
Well, I'm so glad you could join me tonight. How you have the show Star Speak, and you're going to a little bit different format pretty soon. You want to tell everybody about that?
Well, yes, be happy to. Starting on September 27, each hour show, which is really about 54 minutes, but each show will be devoted to a specific figure in ufology and a study of their astrology that supports and explains why they are as they are. We'll be asking each one to talk about what has brought them to their study of ufology or the paranormal or their particular interest as it may be. And then I'll connect that to elements or parts of the chart that point in that direction.
Well, that sounds fascinating, and your show is really fascinating. I enjoy listening to it and learning new things. I, believe it or not, did not used to believe in astrology until I had a reading, like 30 years ago, and by this astrologer, and she described my life to a T. And so I always wondered how that was possible. How can you tell what a person's life is going to be like by knowing their birth date and maybe their birth time?
Well, that's a really good question. The bias of Western astrology is that individuals have freedom of choice. And so the chart really doesn't determine what a person's life is going to be like. It points in the direction of what their interests are and their inclinations, and possibly some of their issues carried over from past lives. Now, the astrology of India, which is Vedic astrology, is a different situation, and it really does purport to tell exactly the course of the life and what the character will be. But in Western astrology, which is what I practice, we have a different philosophical underpinning, and that is that everybody has choice to make of their lives what they want. There's a certain set or a kit of tools that we all arrive with that are indicated in our astrological birth charts based on birth, time, date, and place. Yes, it contains a lot of information. And as the planets continue to move from those positions at the time of birth, they activate the chart bit by bit as the planets move along through the zodiac and arrive at the degrees in the signs where those planets were placed at originally, either by conjunction or they activate with other important arcs. So the chart tells us when the times of significant events will be, significant developmental events, awakenings, opportunities, and things of that nature, but not so much just exactly what everything will be.
Right. Well, I find it fascinating the results that you got in taking a look at some famous ufologists and their investigations. Would you care to talk about maybe one of those and what you found?
Well, a number of seminal ufologists, in other words, those who established the field and created the momentum that we now have, a number of those have the planet Uranus emphasized in their natal astrologies, that is, their birth astrology. Planet Uranus. J. Allen Hynek is in that group. Jacques Vallée is in that group. Stephen Greer is in that group. Richard Dolan is in that group. Linda Moulton Howe is in that group. And it goes on. They all have an emphasized planet Uranus, or an emphasis on the planet Uranus in their charts by various ways. And so why is that important, you might ask? It's important because of what Uranus stands for. It's the planet that was discovered, is the only planet that was discovered in modern times. And it was discovered by telescope. It's connected, therefore, to modernity and to technological innovation. And that includes advanced methods of travel and space travel and so forth. So you see the immediate connection with the celestial realms. The Greek god Uranos is the god of the celestial dome. That's our planet Uranus, which is connected with the sign of Aquarius, Uranus. Now, all those people I just talked about are not Aquarians, but they've got very Aquarian outlooks because they're open-minded, they think outside of the box, they can conceptualize things that conventional mindsets can't, and so it goes. So yeah, there's a real commonality in the field of ufology.
There certainly is, and I think that it is fascinating that you have combined astrology and ufology and the paranormal. In fact, this is something new and different, really, for the NX Network. But I love it. I think the more that people listen to your show and learn something, they'll learn more about themselves and about why things happen or why things might influence. One thing that we just went through was a terrible time with Mercury. I had communication problems, email problems, phone systems not working, internet stopping. And then you told me as soon as Mercury is out of retrograde, things will shape up. And they did. You were right.
Thank you, Margie. I appreciate that. Well, you're absolutely right. And the reason you're right is that we human beings and our daily affairs are connected to the larger environment that we're a part of. In this case, it's the solar system. And there are energetics within the solar system that affect us and have to be taken into account. Astrology is one way to get at that, to describe it, or even to measure it. And yes, Mercury was retrograde from August 23 through September 14, just passed. And yes, I remember the difficulties that you're talking about, and they certainly were correlated in time with the occurrence of retrograde Mercury. So we in astrology say, well, then that's what you need to pay attention to. That's the sort of effect that you can expect under that arrangement.
Oh, indeed. And when is Mercury going retrograde again?
Well, it goes retrograde 3 times every year. And so let's see, it won't be until December, I believe, that we have our next retrograde Mercury period. So in between retrograde Mercury periods, we've got always 2 good months of what I call clear Mercury, where there's no involvement with it at all. And that will be October and November of this year. So those are the months to forge ahead with projects. Those are the months to have your hair trims and other procedures, and to go to the dentist and see your accountant and do all those kind of things that depend
Okay.
so heavily on accuracy. Yes.
And I had you check to make sure we were clear with XCon, and we are. So that's
Yeah.
it. That's a good thing. We don't need any disruptions for that. Um, so it's it's to the point where I completely believe that that this is something that we need to pay attention to. Kind of wish I had my chart with me every day to tell me, planning things, but it does make me pay attention to the big things and want to check before I do anything major, or like launch a new book or a conference or whatever, to check with you first. So
Well,
thank
there are
you
a
for
couple.
that.
You're welcome. There are a couple of big guidelines that we can all use for that purpose. Number one, inside of Unex magazine, every month, you have the Star Speak report that gives you the days of the months and the days of the month and the important astrological influences that are happening on those days for the month ahead. So that's, you can always check there. And another thing that's a general guideline to always remember is that initiating new projects and engaging the cooperation of other people always goes more smoothly between new and full moons. That's a 2-week period.
Okay.
That always goes much more smoothly during new and full moon, and a little bit less so between full and back around to new. So the 2 weeks of the waxing moon every month signify an opportunity period for taking initiative and being enterprising.
That's good to know. And thank you for doing that column, by the way. That is in every month in an X magazine. And once in a while, Maureen even does a second article for us. She's a prolific writer. Let's talk about a little bit teaser for what you're going to talk about at XCon.
Well, as Margie knows, everybody, I have a penchant and a passion for examining the astrological conditions that pertained or were in effect at important UFO sightings. I've been engaged in this research for the last few months. When I started out, I just had a question in my mind, and that was, is there anything discernibly significant from an astrological standpoint at the time of UFO sightings? So, starting on that question, I began answering my own question by just looking up all these fantastic sightings that have occurred over the last, 70 plus years, and getting the dates for them, in some cases clock times, and looking at the distribution of the planets in the zodiac at the time of those events. And also, in the case where clock times are known, looking at the arrangement of the planets vis-a-vis the rising point, the culminating point, the setting point, and the anti-culminating point. And what I found out is that many of the astounding and earth-shattering UFO encounters and events correlate to noticeable astrological phenomenon, very noticeable, outstanding. Do they all happen that way? I don't know, because there are thousands and thousands, and I'll never get to all of them. Arrow says that it right now has 800 UFO sightings or encounters that it's investigating. MUFON has a database that contains 132,000, and other organizations have even more, much more than an individual such as myself will ever pick through. So I take a selective sample. And what it seems to me is that there's a significant portion of the mass sightings, mass and group sightings, which are the ones that I concentrate on, that really, from an astrological standpoint, appear to be driven by key astrological configurations.
That is just fascinating. And until I met you, that's something that I never would have put together with UFO sightings. But being an investigator, working on many UFO sighting reports, we add things to help us with the investigation, and that is just something else that we could possibly add to it. We just recently added MADAR to all of our reports with it. It's a UFO radar system. So we get correlations with that. We have had a number of sightings where the MADAR has picked up something, and of course that's on record. We can go back and check it, and just it's just another piece of evidence to put with it. And I think everybody's going to find your talk fascinating, Maureen. I really appreciate you doing that. You're going to be speaking at XCon October 30th through November the 1st. And how can people read your blog or your website?
It's free to read. It's titled The Astrology of World Events, and it's a Substack. So you just go in there, and there are about, right now, I think about 25 research reports correlating astrological arrangements with UFO sightings and encounters. There are also some other articles up there that have to do with other aspects of world events, significant world events, politics, economics, the movements of the Dow Jones Industrial Average, and things of that nature. And why? It goes back to Margie's musing just a moment ago. It's because everything that is happening on our planet is happening within the context of the solar system. And the arrangement of the planets in the solar system is what astrology deals with. Most people think, because of the word astrology, ASTR, which is a root word for star, aster, that it's got to do with the stars. It has most fundamentally to do with our local star, the sun, and its family of planets. Yeah. So we're in that context, and everything that happens on our planet, whether it's human relationships, human experience, national experience, celestial experience, paranormal, whatever, it's all happening within the context, the energetic context of the solar system.
That's just fascinating stuff. We've got a few more minutes here, and I'd like to ask you how you got interested in astrology.
I don't remember a time when I was not. I started very young. When I was in elementary school, I started taking account of my schoolmates' birthdays so that I would know what their sun signs were. That continued. Yes. Oh, yes. It's around the 5th or 6th grade that started.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
Did they find it interesting, or were they annoyed by it?
Well, it was my own private study. I never really talked to anybody about it. I just made sure that I knew everybody's birth dates, and then I would go and read the personality profiles, the relevant stuff, but not so much. When I was a young kid, I didn't have any good literature. There wasn't a lot of good literature. That would have been in the 1960s. The good literature in astrology didn't really hit the scene until the 1970s, and all kinds of metaphysical bookstores opened up all over the United States. Mm-hmm. And Yes Bookstore led the way in Washington, D.C., and Samuel Weiser, and then Llewellyn, and, all these publishers that chugged out and turned out Ephemeride and all kinds of books on the psychology of astrology and the techniques of it. That's what made the difference and gave birth to a generation of astrologers. I was one of those, and I came into astrology when it was all hand calculated.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds like a lot of work.
It was, but the doing the mathematics related to figuring out the positions of the planets and the celestial sphere, it's a good exercise, and I'm glad for that time. I'm glad I don't have to do it anymore. I'm glad computers do it and do it in a nanosecond, and it's over quickly, and I can give an answer to a client like that.
Well, that's good. Speaking of clients, are you taking new clients, and what is the process for that? What would you do for them?
Yes, I'm delighted to work with anyone who has a question they'd like to bring to me. It's very simple. You just get in touch with me by email at starsong1208@gmail.com. And I would like to have your birth time, date, and place. If you do not have your birth time and cannot get it, I can still work with you on the basis of your birth date. but there's much more information and higher likelihood of accuracy if I'm working from the full information, which would include the birth, time, and place. And a fully calculated chart for an individual person involves the birth, time, date, and place, all of that information. And that's the best way to go about it. Then we just enter into a conversation, and my job is to help people actualize their desires and their objectives coming from the soul level by helping them understand the time periods they are in, identify their opportunity periods, and manage the tests and challenges of life.
Have you ever had a business client who wanted to make an important decision, like open a new business or something like that, and you gave them advice on it, and it was turned out to be the best thing, or maybe they didn't follow it and it didn't turn out?
Oh, all of the above, Margie. You're very psychic. Sure. There's a branch of astrology called electional astrology, Electional, electional. It's got nothing to do with politics or presidential elections. It means the choosing of times. And yes, that's one of the services that astrologers classically offer. That is the electing or choosing of times for anything. It could be the starting of a business. It could be the beginning of construction on a building. It could be for a wedding or anything that's any kind of event that's important. And I've done electional determinations for everything that you can think of, all of that. I've been practicing astrology for more than 40 years. So every possible situation you can think of at some point in time, I did, yes. As for the success rate of those things, I think about one particular business that I did the start point for. It's called an incorporation chart, meaning choosing the time for when an entity formally becomes incorporated. And that entity is now trading publicly and doing just fine.
Wow. That just shows the importance of checking with your professional astrologer before you make a major move. Speaking of moving, do you ever advise people about where to move to live or to have a vacation?
Yes, the answer is yes. That is another piece of astrological practice called relocational astrology or locational astrology. And it has really, this branch of astrology has really come into its own since computerized astrology, because it allows for the calculation of what would essentially be the individual's birth chart all over the world, all at the same time, and then to be displayed in a graphic situation that it takes some training to read. But yes, it can be done, or it can be done another simpler, old-fashioned way, which is to just calculate a chart for another location, east or west of the place of birth, and see what the difference is. North and south migration doesn't make as much a difference in the astrological chart as east and west migration would.
Ah,
yeah,
okay.
It makes some difference. And if you go all the way to the poles, it makes a tremendous difference. But, within the temperate zone, north and south migration has a negligible effect on the chart. But as I said, the east and west movement, and the farther you go, it can really make a very big difference. And so, yes, I've worked with many clients for that purpose. To go back to your question, do I ever advise on that? Well, yes, because I'm able to describe what conditions are likely to prevail in an area, but it's always up to the individual to decide what they want to do.
Yes, it is. And I can tell you that I learned my lesson the hard way when I went to the Bahamas before having my locational astrology chart done. And I got very ill and almost died. In fact, I felt myself lifting up out of my body. And I had a time travel experience, which I'm not going to take time to talk about here, but I had that experience, made it back home. Then I had my chart done. It said never, ever go to the Bahamas along that line of latitude, because if you survive it, you will have a life-changing event. And that completely happened. And that's what changed my mind immediately about astrology, about
that was
there's something there.
There is. I once had a client ask me about a trip out west. She lived on the almost all the way to the East Coast, not all the way to the Atlantic Ocean, but pretty close. And she wanted to go out to Montana or Wyoming or something and go horseback riding. And I checked her locational or relocational astrology, also called astrocartography or astrolocality. And a Mars line was passing through precisely where she wanted to go. And I said, no, you may not do that. Please do not do that. And she said, oh, but my family and I and blah, and they're already out there, and I'm gonna have my knife. I don't go, So she went, and she did go. They were all going to do horseback riding. She did get on a horse, and unfortunately, she fell out of the saddle, but one of her feet did not come out of the stirrup.
Ooh.
And she had a bit of a bumpy ride on a stone path. Fortunately, it didn't kill her, and she made it back home, but it scared the living daylights out of her. Well, we could have avoided that if we just paid attention to the Mars line. So I say, yeah, I think probably it's very important to pay attention to these things.
Yeah, it certainly is. Well, I love having you on board with the X, and I'm looking forward to your talk at XCon. And thank you so much for spending some time with me this evening, Maureen.
You're welcome. I'm honored to be part of it, and we'll talk soon.
Okay. Well, that's it for the show for tonight. I'm Margie Kay, and I'll see you here again next week.